How y'all doing? I'm Paul Ryan, your host of the Across the Cowboys podcast. If you're new to the show, thank you for joining us. And to our regular listeners, welcome back. With me, as always, is my co-host, the greatest co-host in the world, Mike the Pig Crum. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing good, my friend. Got a day off today. Just saw who the guest was. I'm extremely happy about that. So I don't know if we'll be able to air it on Twitter, as I was saying, because this man is a resident of poor Twitter jail. But we're gonna give it a shot. See if they let us.
Did you put some money on his books on his last stint in Twitter jail, Mike?
Bail him out. Get him out of bail. I paid for a day. He got out a day early for me.
Well, Mike, so we can introduce our guests. Remind them where they can find you on Twitter, sir.
At CD Piglet, guys. Nice and easy.
I'm Paul Ryan. You can find me on Twitter at Paul_Ryan15. Well, here we are with our final episode of Cowboys Beef Season 2. So, of course, because of that, we want to go out with a bang. Our next guest, like Mike said, is fresh out of Twitter jail, the funniest member of Cowboys Nation. You've seen his TikToks, and I know you've heard his Jerry Jones impersonations. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Kelly K9 to the show. Kelly, how are you?
I'm doing great, guys. How the hell are you?
Doing good.
Kelly, let the people know where they can find you on Twitter.
It's at Kelly K9. Pretty simple. And if you can't find that, then there is a burner account. I guess Jerry's illegitimate son.
You're gonna
like that,
don't throw that out there. If they're listening, they're gonna catch you on that one too.
Well, let's hope we're not reaching the ears of the Twitter monitors that are out there watching. I got some tricks to how I do that though, as far as so they're not picking up on the same IP address. I won't give that away just yet. So yeah.
We've all got our tricks, don't we, Kelly?
Yes, sir. That's right.
Okay, Kelly, I'm curious, before we get into our discussion tonight, I noticed the handle there, Kelly K9. One popular thing that's been going on this offseason is, somebody's got that dog in them. And of course, we know K9 is kind of like an abbreviation or term for a dog. But where does the inspiration for the handle there?
Well, actually, that
or is that private too? Do we have to go offline for that?
Well, I mean, it's yes and no. I got that name when I was a young knucklehead kid. So short story, I was in a position where I shouldn't have been in a car that I did not own, and I got in a case and I ended up hiding out for about 45 minutes in a doghouse with a German Shepherd. And so after the story got out, one of my friends started calling me K9, and the nickname stuck with me through all my childhood friends. And it's just like it's stuck with me everywhere I went. So like people that know me from back in my childhood and stuff, and even now, it's the ones that still know me from then, they still refer to me and still call me K9. So the name just kind of stuck with me from there. So so I got that name.
At least that's some meaning and a cool story behind it as well, at least.
Yeah, me too. Oh my God, that's offline. We'll get into that one.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into this discussion tonight. Kelly, I'm curious, how did you become a Cowboys fan, and how long have you been a Cowboys fan?
I have been, well, I mean, technically it's one of those things where I was born and raised with, my mom and dad were both Cowboys fans. They both are born and raised in Texas. And then so 1992 was the first time I ever watched a Cowboys game. And it was actually the Super Bowl. I hadn't really paid much attention to the Cowboys at that point, but my mom, we had moved up to Iowa, and she and a friend that she knew that met, she was from Texas. She invited my mom to the Super Bowl party. She had kids around my age, so I went to the Super Bowl party with her and actually watched the game from beginning to end. And that's when I really started, I saw them win the Super Bowl, and that was really a cool experience for me. So from then on there, I was kind of hooked into it. So, then watched again and went to another Super Bowl party the next year. And I actually was able to watch a handful of games. This is back before you could stream them and get all the good stuff, watch them every Sunday. So I didn't get to watch a lot of them because it's the Midwest. They didn't televise a lot of Cowboys games. I saw maybe, I think 2 or 3 during that 93 season. So not a lot, but I kept up with them. And I, checked the scores in the papers and stuff like that. And then it just grew from there, and it evolved. And, and then, I always tell people, I say after the 95 season, when they won it again versus Pittsburgh, I started to think to myself that, being a Cowboys fan was the easiest thing in the world. It was like, we're just going to be winning Super Bowls. It's so easy. I was like, we're just going to rack these things up, man. I was like, we're like the Chicago Bulls of football. We're just going to start just taking championships every year. And little did I know that in 95, at the tender age of 15 would be the last time I'd see a Super Bowl. And here I am, 41 years old, talking about 1995 as the glory years, and 92 and 93. So, man, it's long overdue for another Super Bowl, and damn, I sure am ready for one. But yeah, I'm waiting with bated breath.
I'm gonna tell you something right now, Kelly. I'm in the same boat as you. And as a teenager, I followed Jimmy Johnson, watched him win, talked so much crap, best team ever. If we win one, me and you are gonna come on and just have a shot or something, just like old school, my friend. Can I ask you, your parents, okay, Iowa, did they move from Texas to Iowa? How did they become Cowboy fans?
Okay, so when we were in Texas for quite a while, and then what happened was my grandpa, and then actually my dad, my mom's dad, and then my dad, were both preachers, and so like they ministered, but they also like moved around to like different congregations, and basically like tried to bring it was the Church of Christ, it's non-denominational church, so they kind of like moved around and basically like missionary type stuff into other states and stuff. So we moved around a lot as a kid. I bounced like all around. I lived mostly around the Midwest and down south, but my grandpa my parents got divorced. My grandpa, and so her dad, he moved up to Iowa to minister one of the churches up there, and she followed him up to Iowa. So that's how we ended up in Iowa, which is how I have connections and friends up in this neck of the woods. But then my grandparents moved back down to Texas, where they're from. She followed them back down there, and then I ended up back down there in Lubbock, Texas, which is where I was at for like about 20 years before I came back up here. My dad moved up here. No idea how his parents ended up in Iowa, but they live in Sloan, Iowa. So it's kind of a weird thing because they all, including my grandparents, were all in Texas, and then all somehow ended up here in the Midwest, literally within about an hour and a half of each other. Like my grandparents on my mom's side, grandparents on my mom's side, they lived in a town called Atlantic, Iowa, and my dad, his parents moved to Sloan, Iowa, which is about an hour from each other. And they never met each other. They didn't know each other. So it's kind of weird how that all worked out. But yeah, I have the Midwest, and then I have the Texas connections. So
that's so crazy. I'm interested in this next question because you watched and saw them win the Super Bowl, but you weren't like a hardcore fan. So who's your all-time favorite Cowboy, and then also your current, this team's favorite player?
My all-time favorite Cowboy would have to be Emmitt Smith. I mean, I saw him, and he was the longest tenured in terms of like, he was there the longest after all the other guys from the glory days. He hung around the longest. He was a hard-nosed player, took care of his body, fought and grinded out yards. I mean, I just love to watch him play. So yeah, he was my favorite. And now current Cowboys, current Dallas Cowboys out on this roster, I have to go with Dak. I find him just like, you can take the football out of it. He's an inspiring individual. Just his attitude in life in general, his positivity, the way he carries himself on and off the football field. I feel like he's a leader, and I feel like he does things that, the right way. So he's just a guy that you can't help but admire and root for and want to see him win. So yeah, it's got to be Dak.
Yeah. Faith fight finish. I have a couple of family members, maybe my two closest, that deal with mental illness. And so him with that, I've obviously bought shirts and donated to his organization. It's like me and Paul used to talk about it. Like, do we want Cowboys to win? But I just as much want Dak Prescott to win. And I don't think there's another player that in the whole time I've been a Cowboys fan I want him to win, not just my team, So yeah, I love Dak.
Absolutely.
Kelly, you mentioned how you became a fan of the Cowboys when you were witnessing them win a Super Bowl, and it looked like last year, the first few weeks, that we were on the path to win another one. Well, when you look at that 2021 season, who do you feel was most responsible for Dallas' success or lack thereof?
Well, the success, I would say, would be Dan Quinn. I think he was the difference maker on that. I think that defense carried us, or kept us in a lot of games, and actually changed the tide of a few games actually with how they played. And I thought it was him. He was the guy that I was most excited for in the offseason, and that came with, whether it was players drafted, players picked up in free agency, whatever. He was the acquisition that I was most excited about, just because he had the head coaching experience in Atlanta, and, people will, always talk about the collapse in the Super Bowl. But the point is that he got them to that Super Bowl. And that was an incredible season that they had with him under the head coach. And he's been a great defensive coordinator everywhere he's went. So, his defensive prowess and the way that he coaches that defense, I love Dan Quinn. I think he's a hell of a coach. And I love what he's done for this defense, and what I think he's going to continue to do for this defense coming into this season here in 2022.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what about, is there any reason you think, would you put blame on anything for why they, kind of slipped towards the second half and then had the first round elimination?
Yeah, I thought that I know that the offense, and when you look at the statistics and stuff, which everybody will point to the statistics that Kellen Moore has as an offensive coordinator, and I get it, number one in this and number one in that and all that stuff, but I just don't feel like he's a great at in-game adjustments. I feel like that whatever game plan he goes in with, that's what they're sticking with. Whether it works or it doesn't work, they're going to stick with it come hell or high water. And I just feel like he's not great at in-game adjustments. And I don't know. So, when Dak started struggling with the mobility and he had that injury and stuff, I don't think that they figured out creative ways to help him, and maybe find other ways to kind of ease some of that pressure off him and say, hey, look, this is not the guy that we saw at the beginning of the season. Obviously there's something wrong here. So let's cater the game a little bit and do things to make this a little bit easier. I just didn't think they did a great job at that. And I felt like the offensive talent last year was there and I just felt it was severely underutilized. I mean, how many times have we talked about getting Tony Pollard into this game? And, they're talking about it now in training camp, how he's been lining up at slot receiver. They've been seeing some formations where he's lining up at slot. Well, why didn't they do that last year? I mean, the dude is a versatile guy. He's a Swiss Army knife. I compare him to an Alvin Kamara type running back, because I think he has that type of capability. I really do. I think he's fast, he's quick, he's shifty, he can line up. You could line him up at receiver, you can line him up in the backfield with Zeke. I just feel like there's so many ways that you could utilize him that they didn't utilize him. I felt like there was just a lack of creativity there in the weapons that we had, that we just didn't really get down to utilizing, and that was discouraging for me. So I'm hoping that that Kellen Moore is finding a way to do that. I'm hoping maybe he's leaning on some of Mike McCarthy a little bit. I don't know, with the brain trust there, lean on the guys that are around you and do some things this year to definitely get your guys that have the speed, let them make plays. I mean, it works. Let them do it. So
they got the guys, Turpin, Lamb, Pollard, all guys you could do some unique stuff with motion and stuff out of the backfield. So I'm with you. He when his stuff works, he could pile on you and make you look real bad. But I agree. If you find something that could shut him down, you don't see a lot of adjustment. They kind of just, hey, Dak, make plays.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at kind of like what Andy Reid does with the Chiefs. I mean, their whole offense is built around speed, and you can't argue with the results. I mean, I'm not, you can't take away from Mahomes. He's a great quarterback. He's got a cannon for an arm, but you look at a lot of these plays that they do. Some of these plays they're not long passes. They're getting a guy out in open space and then letting him make plays. I mean, Tyreek Hill, you look at the guy like that, he can turn a 5-10 yard little pass and take that sucker 80 yards. You don't always have to be chunking the ball 60, 70 yards down the field in order to utilize that speed. You can do that in other ways. Like I said, get them out in space and watch them make plays because, guys like Pollard, I mean, the dude is lightning. You get him in that open field, man, and all he's got to do is break a tackle or, get around a guy, get out in that open, and he's gone, so they got to do things to get their guys. And then, this new guy Turpin, I'm liking what I'm hearing about him too, like you said. So, I mean, yeah, they've got guys that can do this. So they're going to have to find a way to use those guys, especially if the offensive line is struggling this year. So.
All right. So let me move Kellen Moore out because he could be the answer to this question, but we've talked about him now.
Sure.
Who's your step up or step out candidate for this year?
So I talked about this. Actually, I went on a show last week and talked about this. And for me, it's Leighton Vander Esch. And the reason why is because I thought he played solid down the stretch last year, but he's on a 1-year prove-it deal right now. So, I mean, to me, I want to see him get back to the form that he was playing at as a rookie. I want to see him because if you can get him playing and feeding off of and playing with the intensity that I believe that he can, but to match Micah Parsons, if you can get those two guys, because Leighton Vander Esch is still a young linebacker. So if you could get those two guys right there playing at a very high level, and then you want to talk about throwing in a guy like Jabril Cox, if he comes along and is what we think he can be, I mean, you could have a lethal combination at linebacker there. So, I mean, he's on that 1-year deal, if he wants to get that long-term deal by the Cowboys, I think this is year to step up and this is year to do it. And I think that those two have the capability. Parsons is already, in my opinion, the best linebacker in the game. I think he's honestly, by the end of this year, I think he'll be the best defensive player in the game, period. But I think him and Parsons have the ability of being the best linebacker duo in the game, to where they're talking about those two in Dallas are the best linebacker duo in all the NFL. So that's what I'd love to see from Leighton Vander Esch. And signs are early in camp is that he's having a hell of a camp. So hopefully that continues into the regular season.
Would you say if Leighton were to stay healthy for all 17 games and played similar to what you saw last year, I mean, would you feel comfortable giving him like a 2 or 3 year deal?
Yeah, I thought he played pretty well last year. I mean, I think he can continue to build off of that, and I think he can improve. I think he can have, a better season. But yeah, I mean, if he stays healthy and plays all 17 games and, he's playing well like he was at, last year, because I thought last year he had a pretty decent year when it was all said and done. So yeah, I think so. I think he'd be a guy that they could come to the table with and sign him to a multi-year deal. And I think this is his chance to earn that money. So go out there and get your money, man.
Absolutely. When I was going over to linebackers on I was doing the rankings in the division, and Leighton Vander Esch last year had like his most tackles for loss, a bunch. And he only played like 56% of the snaps. Yeah, I think that's a big key. Limit his snaps so for his wear and tear. But I think I would offer we have Cox, we have Parsons, we have Damone Clark. So maybe we play him up, let him make a big contract somewhere else, and we just sneak that comp pick and just, we'll take that and play our young.
That's a possibility too. I mean, you got to look at how that injury goes with Clark, because I think they've said that that his injury is that he may actually see the field this year. So that would be a win, if you can get him on the field, maybe late in the season and you can see what you can get out of him. And I mean, if he looks the part and if he looks like a guy where you're like, hey, this guy's showing some flashes that he can definitely be something here, then yeah, that absolutely could be a thing that you do where because then you've got Micah Parsons still on a rookie deal. You'd have Jabril Cox, and then you'd have Clark also if you decide to go that route with those three guys. So yeah, that definitely could be a deal. You always want to manipulate and work that salary cap to keep that low figure. So absolutely, I'm all for that. Stephen Jones is all for that. Stephen Jones is all for that.
All for that.
He's probably thinking what you said already in his head. That's what he's thinking right there.
He's already so excited to get rid of Schultz and Leighton Vander Esch. He's like, yeah,
get
him out.
He's like, you boys go out and have yourselves an all-pro year.
Yeah, and then we'll take the comp picks.
Yeah, because we will not re-sign you.
All right, Kelly, you can only pick one, no caveats, no 1A or 1B, but which move from Dallas is your biggest disappointment from this offseason?
Well, shoot, that's a tough one.
There was that many, huh?
Well, I no, it's just, I know a lot of people were talking about how, the whole Amari Cooper thing, and they're like, well, he just made too much money and stuff. They're like, he made too much money for the production that he had. But I don't know. I still liked Amari Cooper. I still liked him as a wide receiver. I still liked him as a person, as a teammate. I didn't really I mean, I get the whole salary cap thing. But I don't know how they got to where they got with him, because I felt like he was a great team player. I felt like he gelled well with the team. I felt like he got along good with Dak. And so I don't really know where that went. So I guess I would have to go there. I mean, I like the idea of lining up Cooper, Lamb, and Gallup all together healthy. You know what I mean? I like that, thinking about that as a possibility. And, maybe if they kept him around, maybe instead of, and I'm not saying Tolbert may not turn out to be a good guy, but maybe they could have snagged another offensive lineman. I mean, in the draft, instead of having to go after a wide receiver to replace what they lost in Cooper, at least try to replace some of the, with Cedric Wilson or whatever, with the depth that they lost at wide receiver. So yeah, I'd have to say Amari Cooper, I guess, since I can't do a 1B, I have to keep it 1A. I'll go Amari Cooper.
Well, is wide receiver the position group you most worry about, or is there a one that you think's worse?
For me right now, it's offensive line that I'm most worried about. I don't feel the depth back there is what it needs to be. And I don't know that, because, man, you look at Tyron Smith there, it's not an if, it's a when he's going to get injured, because it's going to happen. I mean, he already limped off the field the other day in that joint practice. I mean, he's not a guy you can depend on for 17 games. You just can't. You're going to have have a guy back there that can, play when he's injured, or if anything else, reduce maybe some of the snaps, and try to kind of keep him fresh for if you hope to make a playoff run. If it looks like you're gonna make a playoff run, reduce some of the reps that you're giving him and keep him healthy for the playoffs. But I mean, he's a guy that you really just can't depend on for 17 games. Everybody's always like, well, when he's healthy, he's one of the best in the, he's one of the best in the game, which I don't disagree with that. But how often is he healthy? I mean, the track record speaks for itself. I don't think he's had a year where he's played every single game. And I think it's 4 years now, maybe 5. Yeah. So, I mean, he's missed a lot of time. So yeah, that offensive line it scares me. And after, reading and, watching some of the highlights of the Denver game, it didn't really do a whole lot to put my fears to the side. For a while it was the linebacker, because I thought we were just super thin on experience there. But with the signing of Barr, made me feel a little bit better about the linebacking crew. I think we have a little bit more depth back there now, especially with a couple of the rookies we even have. So feel a little bit better about that. Now this offensive line for me is my primary concern. Watching what's out there in free agency, I feel like there's some veterans that are floating out there that absolutely would be better than what we have right now behind our starters. It's not guys that you'd plug in maybe as a starter, but at least be a serviceable backup compared to what we have right now. That Josh Ball is, oh boy, he's hard to watch.
Yeah, he had his issues this game for sure.
Yeah.
Kelly, I know we were talking pre-roll that you didn't get a chance to watch the game, or you decided not to watch the game after hearing all the seeing all your Twitter notifications. But when you saw the highlights and you kind of heard what people were discussing, what about Saturday's game worries you most?
Penalties. The penalties. I mean, I have said this multiple times during the offseason. I said it multiple times throughout last year, even in the San Francisco game, it reared its head. Last year, this team was an undisciplined football team. Boneheaded penalties that cost us points, penalties that cost us crucial first downs and killed drives. We saw it game in and game out these penalties that just made you bang your head on the wall. You'd have a 3rd and 8, Dak would complete it 15 yards for a first down, holding, comes back. Now it's 3rd and 12. Time and time again, these penalties killed this team. And so the thing that I wanted to see was, could Mike McCarthy and this coaching staff clean that up? Could they get this team to be a more disciplined team? And I've heard people say, well, it's just a first preseason game. Well, guess what? It was everybody's first preseason game. And if the stats held correct, at least I know it did going into the 4th quarter. So unless another team just completely jumped and blew it out of the water, going into the 4th quarter, the Cowboys had the most penalties of any preseason game this year. That's not a good thing. That's not a step in the right direction. That's the same old Cowboys that we saw last year. So, I mean, if you want this team to show improvement, they're going to have to get rid of those penalties. They cannot be one of the most penalized teams in the league and think that we're going to have a shot come the playoffs. Undisciplined teams don't win in January. They just don't.
And the thing about the first week of the preseason, the average penalties were 6.5 a game.
Yeah, and what do we have? How many did we have? Was it
17?
17? Yeah.
We were called for 22. 17 were accepted.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
insane.
And the thing about it is, you're absolutely right. People go, well, it's young. People that Fowler, Basham, Joseph, they all had penalties. They're not rookies or haven't played before. And they were penalties that you're like, come on, why are you lining up off sides? I could deal with Nashawn Wright's penalty. I know it took away interception. He was making a play, it happened. I could deal with Tyler Smith's. Yeah, he grabbed a guy. A holding happens. Honestly, both of them, if in a normal game, maybe aren't even called. They were both calls that are you could have thrown a flag, could have held it. But the ones where you line up off sides or late hit or whatever, I'm like, come on. They're that kind of stuff is about team discipline. It's about coaching. And McCarthy has never been in Green Bay. He was never top half of the league. In I think 16th was the highest he was ever at in penalties. So I don't know what happened, what the difference is from now to then.
Yeah. I don't know either. It's definitely concerning. And right out of the gate, showed some of the same things that we saw last year. So, I mean, that's one of those things where I'm going to watch and I'm going to continue to pay attention in game 2 and the rest of these preseason games that we've got to see if they can start cutting down on these penalties. Cause I mean, you even saw I saw, like I said, I didn't really watch the game, but I did watch some of the highlights and stuff like that. And I saw one of the plays where McCarthy had it was their 14th penalty and he was just kind of, you seen the disgust on his face. He's not happy with it either. So I'm hoping, come practice this week that he's got his guys that he's running the living shit out of them because, you have to pound it into these guys' heads, man. You cannot make these boneheaded plays that cost this football team. Whatever the message he's got to get across to him, he's got to do something.
I know you didn't sit and watch the game through, but throughout the practices, the highlights that you watch, was there a certain player or position group that you were zoned in on? Okay, what are these guys doing in these practices and in this preseason game?
Well, I've watched pretty closely this young wide receiver group, just because that's something that stands out to me. We've got a lot of unproven guys that are looking to make their name in the NFL here. And, you've got a guy like Noah Brown, who's having a really impressive camp, but he did some good things last year. It never really kind of panned out when the season started, but you can maybe contribute that to other guys that just had better success, like a Cedric Wilson, came out and had really good. So, Noah Brown getting a lot of playing time on the field with Cooper and Lamb and all that and whatnot. But, we've got a young wide receiver group here and I've been impressed with the things that I've seen with them so far through training camp. But, come week 1, when you're, lining up against the Bucks, are those young guys going to step up and make the plays needed? That's kind of what we need to know here, because you're not going to have a Michael Gallup for at least a couple of weeks to start the season. So you're going in there with with guys that don't have a lot of experience. I mean, outside of CeeDee Lamb, I mean, that's it. You know, you had your James Washington. He went down with an injury. The Cowboys have chose not to take a look at any of the free agents that are out there, not bring anything in. Maybe they'll decide to change their minds the closer it gets to start of the season. But what I'm going to look forward to most, though, I think, you know, going forward with that wide receiver group is the next preseason game when you do see the starters on the field and you do see Dak Prescott and some of these wide receivers, is that, you know, who gets on that field with them and who it is that, you know, that is going to see making plays. Are we going to see a Fehoko out there making some plays? Thought he made that good touchdown grab in the preseason game. You're going to see a Vasher making some plays. Is Turpin going to get any time? Is he going to get any play out there at wide receiver? Probably not with Dak, but, you know, stuff like that. I want to see what Dak does with this young wide receiving group in the preseason before we get to Tampa Bay. You know, and see what that chemistry looks like with those younger guys.
If you could pluck one, like you are the magic genie, and you could pick one guy that he's not an all-pro, but he's Cedric Wilson. Which of the wide receivers that we have under CeeDee Lamb would you be like, make this guy the guy that is a Cedric Wilson, minimum Cedric Wilson type player? Which one would you like to see become that guy?
Well, for me, it's my Texas on this shoulder. My Texas Tech guy, Vasher. I mean, I'm a big Texas Tech guy, so I'd like to see him be that guy. You know, when he was playing at Texas Tech, I really thought, you know, that he was going to get drafted. I figured he'd be a late round guy, 6th or 7th, but when he went undrafted and then the Cowboys, you know, snagged him up, I was pretty happy with that, just because he's got a lot of the measurables that you want to see. He's rangy. He's got, I mean, he's long. And, you know, when they would throw the ball up to him at Tech, I mean, if they threw the ball up to that guy, he was coming down with it. Like, it didn't matter who was guarding him. Like, he was a hell of a red zone threat. And he was a guy that many times our, you know, quarterback that we had, because when he played with some quarterbacks that were not the greatest. And I think he had 3 different quarterbacks his last year. And I mean, he was the go-to guy. They would just throw it his way and he would snatch that ball out of the air. And I just feel like that if he gets his chance, I know that he's built up a little bit of strength and he's put a little bit of muscle on, because that's the thing, is he's kind of a scrawny guy. He's pretty skinny. He's not real big, but, you know, I've heard that, you know, he's put some muscle on and stuff. So for me, that's the guy, is Vasher, just because I'm a, you know, Texas Tech homer. So I want to see my guy do good, especially since Garibay shit the bed and completely let me down. I'm sitting there hyping him up when we got the guy and talking about how he's got a cannon for a leg. And then, you know, all of a sudden he just, you know, proceeds to just miss field goal after field goal after field goal. I'm like, shit, way to go, buddy.
Hey, my prediction, he will make the practice squad of this team. And at some point in the season, Garibay will take over as our kicker. That's a prediction that I'm putting out there. I still think that kid's going to end up being the kicker, because I just don't think Erlahu or Brett Maher through a season are going to make you like, oh, forget about the young guy we brought in. I think he gets on the practice squad. He fixes what's in his head. And I think somewhere in the middle of the season, he ends up being the kicker. Just a prediction.
I hope that prediction comes true. I was rooting for him. I mean, he's a good kid, and, you know, he didn't show he didn't show any of that, what he showed in practice at Texas Tech. He was a pretty accurate kicker. He was consistent. You know, you could depend on the guy with the long field goal kicks. So I was very surprised. And, you know, kicking is a mental game. So, I mean, there definitely could be a lot of pressure on this kid. I mean, you know, getting signed to the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, all eyes are on him. So definitely could be some stuff in his head. I mean, it has to be in his head, in my opinion, because the talent, the leg strength is there. You know, that he's shown that the accuracy is there. So I'm hoping he can get it right. And yeah, I'd like that prediction to come true. I'd be perfectly fine with that.
Sorry, I got us off track, Paul. Go ahead.
No worries. No worries at all. You know, Kelly, you mentioned the nerves with these younger players, and we know that on Saturday none of our starters were really playing. But, you know, in that case, how do you evaluate a team?
You know, you just, I mean, on that, I think you're looking for guys to, you're looking for guys to step up and play with intensity. You're looking for guys that on defense, you're looking for these young guys to fly to the ball, these guys to be the defensive players, be aggressive, attack the ball, that Dan Quinn philosophy, try get turnovers, so you're looking for guys to play with effort because yeah, it's a preseason game, but, you want to see the intensity in these guys. I mean, because you look at a guy like Micah Parsons last year. I mean, that guy wanted to rip people's heads off in the preseason. That's something you want to see. You want to see that intensity. You want that to be any of these guys because, their future hangs in the balance for a lot of these guys. So if you're just out there just kind of going through the motions and, preseason, whatever, I mean, you want to see these guys fighting, clawing, for every opportunity that they get. So I just like to see the intensity in these young guys, man. I love to see the excitement. I love to see after a big catch, these guys get up and be excited and, and pumped up and show that, that fire. Because that's what you want on your team. Essentially, you want 53 Micah Parsons on your team.
Man,
yes,
yeah.
you do. Deron Bland is a perfect example. He came in. Is he going to make the team? He fits their stuff that you've seen him play, and everybody automatically was like, okay, he's on the team. Like, he obviously can play. Now, now he's fighting. Now he's like, okay, Nashawn Wright, Kelvin Joseph, but where's he at? Yeah. And speaking of homerism, a Fresno State guy. So that's my homer team. So it was, I knew he'd be a special teams guy because he legit is CJ Goodwin for Fresno State. I mean, He was a monster on special teams. Man, he looks really good. So yeah, I think you look for stuff like that.
For sure.
Do you think the preseason does it mean anything?
No, I don't think it does. In my opinion, honestly, I don't think they'll ever get rid of the preseason because the owners, they love the money. They rake in that money. They still get the same, the tickets may not be as expensive, but that's all about money, the TV money, the ticket money. But in my personal opinion, you can get just as much out of these joint scrimmages as you can a preseason game, because you look at these joint scrimmages, you hear about the fights, the brawls there's intensity in those that you saw. I don't know if I'm sure you guys saw it. It made its rounds, but the hit that Chubb had on Zeke where he smashed into Zeke. I mean, there's intensity in those joint practices. If you think there's not, then you've never seen a joint practice before, because there's intensity in those. So I feel like, just do the joint practices. You don't really need these preseason games, because I don't know. I think they're kind of pointless in my opinion. I think you can get just as much out of the joint practices. I said the other day, I was like, man, watching preseason football is like drinking non-alcoholic beer. I was like, you got the taste, you get a taste of something you love, but it does not accomplish what you set out to accomplish. So I don't really like the preseason. I don't get a bunch out of it. And I just kind of, if anything, it's always just me kind of holding my breath when the starters are out there, hoping somebody doesn't go down with an injury. And, it's just added playing time that means absolutely nothing.
Don't be surprised if you don't. I don't think Dak will play in the preseason. I think Cowboys, Jerry Jones wants to make the money, but I think Mike McCarthy's like, the joint practices is where we're going to get our work. But in the preseason, I ain't playing none of y'all.
I'd be 100% fine with that. I would be fine if he never saw the field. I'd be fine if Tyron Smith, Micah Parsons. I mean, your guys, your playmakers, what you got in those guys. You don't need to have them out on the field. You don't need to have Zeke on the field. I wouldn't even put Tony Pollard on the field. Like, none of those guys. Like, let your young guys fight that shit out. And and if all your backups go through the season and it look like hot dog shit, so be it, whatever. But you're gonna see some guys make some plays. Let Tolbert get valuable playing time in. Tolbert, I think, needs some playing time and whatnot. But your star guys, absolutely, I'm okay. Don't play any of those.
Agreed.
Absolutely. Kelly, we talked about penalties and, just kind of the heart of this team being in question. Do you feel that this team is lacking veteran leadership?
I don't necessarily think so, because And the reason I say that is because I think on offense, I think Dak is all the leader you need for that offense. And honestly, for the team in general, I think he's a great leader. But if you're going to look to a leader on the defensive side of the ball, and I know it's only his second year, but I think Micah Parsons has already grabbed the reins there. I mean, you look at his work ethic, you look at the things he says, you look at the way that he don't back down at all. And he is one of those players. When you talk about somebody that's a dog, Micah Parsons is that guy. Every single snap, he's that guy. So I think he's grabbed the reins as a great leader, on that defense. So yeah, I don't necessarily buy the fact that you have to have a bunch of grizzled veterans or, guys out there to lead your team. I just think you have to have the right leaders. And I think that Dak Prescott you couldn't find a better example of a leader than Dak Prescott. And I think Micah Parsons on that defense is a guy who literally leads by example in how he plays. And I think people feed off of that. I think people watch that and they're like, damn, that man plays with his hair on fire. Like, how could you not want to play to that level of intensity when you see that on an everyday basis in practice? I mean, the man's he calls himself the lion. He's a lion. He absolutely is a lion.
He snagged the leadership role from Tank too.
He did. He did.
Snagged it. Rika. Hi, Rika. We miss you. I got to get back on that show too. What do you think? Is there one veteran you think on this team that might end up being cut? Maybe it's not a surprise, but a guy that you see that's been here for a few years that may not end up making the squad.
Yeah, I could see a guy, and I know that in practice he's had a few decent practices, but Tristan Hill is a guy who stands out to me, just because of what's in front of him. You got a Neville Gallimore, you've got a Osa, there's some guys that are along that line that I think that are in front of him, and he hasn't really shown a whole lot up to this point. When he got drafted, there were question marks around his work ethic, whether the guy loved to play football. And I still kind of question that. I don't really know. At times you might see a little bit of flat, but I don't think it's been enough to keep him around. Honestly, a guy like him, I could absolutely see him getting cut just because of the talent that's in front of him. And he's going to have a really strong preseason, in my opinion. He's going to have to show out in these preseason games. That's a guy who's going to need to be on the field and who's going to need to make impact plays. Cause if not, you're not really losing anything cutting a guy like that. So that's my guy, in my opinion.
I agree. I get the practices, but man, he flashes, but he never finishes.
Right.
Never.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, look at him beat that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then, he didn't get the stop, or the running back got behind him, or the quarterback stepped up and got around him. Maybe it's not always his fault, but you're year 4 now. Like, this is it. Like, yeah, I agree. That would be my guy too.
Yeah.
Looking at the free agent landscape, is there one that you'd like to bring in, Kelly, to upgrade this team?
I was looking at that free agent waiver wire, and there's not really a whole lot out there. Wide receiver. I kind of look at a guy like maybe an Emmanuel Sanders. If you're looking at maybe trying to bring in a wide receiver, I kind of like what he might be able to bring to the table, just because, like I said, I feel we're thin at that position and don't have a whole lot of experience. So I got to see what some of these guys do. So maybe like an Emmanuel Sanders, but there are some veteran offensive linemen out there, but there's nobody that really jumps off where you're like, damn, that guy right there would make an impact on this team. There's not really anybody like that I looked at. I kind of looked over that list and saw all the available free agents. There's not really anybody that I'm like, wow, we need that guy, because he could definitely change the outcome of this season. I don't think there's anybody like that out there at this point.
Well, all included draft signings, Anthony Barr even added in now. Grade the Cowboys off season.
I'm I kind of thought about this, and I'm kind of just a flat right in the middle. I'd have to give him like a C right now. Nothing really impressive. Nothing that I really thought has been like, that I thought was an impactful thing that really drastically improved this team. But nothing that, that really, made the team a lot worse. My whole thing was, I just felt about this team is that I didn't really see us get a whole lot worse, but I didn't really see us get better either. I felt like we kind of stayed flat. And in a season where last year where I felt like we kind of got, we got out physicaled and outplayed by a tougher, more hard-nosed team in the playoffs that I thought we were more talented than. I thought that overall, top to bottom, we were the more talented team, but I also will say I think we were outcoached, but we were just outplayed by a team that played harder than we did. So I thought we needed to get some more guys with a little bit more dog in them. I know that's a common thing to say, you want guys with dog in them, but I think we needed some more guys that do play with like the level of a Micah Parsons, and I don't really know yet whether we did that or not. I'll be anxious to see it because I think that that Tyler Smith has the ability to have a bit of a mean streak in him. I think he's got some potential to be pretty good. So, we'll see there. And then, our second round pick, Williams, kind of see what he brings to the table. I'm hoping that he, that he has a good season this year. But yes, I have to say a C right now. Nothing too impressive, but hopefully
C minus or C plus. Come on, C minus or C plus. You're being forced. Minus or plus?
I'll give him a C plus. I'll go on the plus side. I'll give him a C plus. Yeah.
All right. That Anthony Barr signing.
Anthony Barr signing too. I did like the Anthony Barr signing. I really did. I was like, finally they did something. It may not have been like, a huge sign, but I think Barr, he'll do good in this defense. I think he'll definitely help out that defense for sure. So I think that it's funny because I feel like that this year, going into this year, and it's the first time that I can remember saying this for a long time, is that I believe that this defense is going to be what we lean on this year more than that offense.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Yeah.
You talked about the offensive line being the position group that you're most worried about, Kelly. But, when you look at the offense as a whole, who do you feel is more important to the success of 2022? Is it Tyler Smith or CeeDee Lamb?
I'm going to have to say Tyler Smith, because I feel like nothing works if this offensive line doesn't work. Dak's going to need time to get rid of the ball. We're going to need, we need Tyler Smith. We need him on that offensive line playing well. We need, good run blocking. We need good pass blocking. So I feel that we need all the help that we can get on that offensive line, because a great wide receiver in CeeDee Lamb, as great as I think he can be, and I think he's gonna be set up for a great season this year. I think he's gonna have a really good season, but none of that works if your quarterback has no time to throw the ball, or your offensive line's getting holding penalties left and right. All of that's for naught.
All right, let's flip it to the other side, because you went trenches on offense. How about defense? More important to the success of the defense, Tank Lawrence in the trenches or all-pro cornerback Trayvon Diggs?
On this one, I'm going to go Diggs. And the reason I'll say that is because I think that our pass rush is in a better shape overall than the secondary right now, because what I would like to see from Diggs is the progression to, and I know a lot of people made a lot of, and I thought a little bit too much of a fuss, people outside of the Cowboys anyway, about, oh, well, he gave up all these yards. Well, I'll take those picks all day, because I don't care what anybody says. You don't just get 11 picks out of luck. You don't get 10 picks off luck. You don't get 9 off luck. Like, you just do not see the kind of season he had because it's luck. They're like, but those interceptions fell into his lap. I watched all 11 of those interceptions, and no, they did not fall in his lap. He got those interceptions, went out and got them. He's an aggressive player. He takes chances and goes after that ball. But what I would like to see is that progression of him being able to also lock people up as well as get those interceptions as well. You know what I mean? So lower those, get it to where, you know, he's got these guys and he can lock them up, and he can be out on an island, and he's the guy that you don't throw his way. So, I mean, I think if you can have a corner like that, I mean, it just changes what offenses, the way that they play you, you know? So, and I just think that our defensive line is deep enough that I think we can generate pass rush. I think we're going to be able to generate pass rush from all over the field, honestly, you know, in the middle. You know, Parsons, they've got a lot of guys I feel that can get after the quarterback this year that excite me in this defense.
Yeah, that don't get me into a rant about the made up stat of yards allowed that some PFF guy came up with to get clicks because he knew Cowboys fans would. Nobody cared about ever. I never heard it. Xavier Howard, I never heard yards allowed. I was like, well, who's a great corner? Well, Marshawn Lattimore, man, great corner. He had like less than 50 yards difference in yards allowed, but this dude got 11 picks. But we're worried about. Don't even. I'll go. I'll just go, Paul. Don't get me going.
We've talked a lot about Micah Parsons tonight, Kelly. But when you look at Micah Parsons and Dak Prescott, who is the better player?
Oh,
yeah,
that's a good one. Wow, man, that's a hard question right there. You know, it's the thing for me is that it's hard for me right now at this point today to say Micah Parsons just because he's had the 1 year. You need to do it for more than a season for me to buy in completely. Now, I'll say it with a caveat. I'm giving it to Dak Prescott, but I'll say this with a caveat. If Micah Parsons comes out and improves off of the season he had last year, like if he's better than what we saw last year, I mean, the next year, the answer might change depending on how the seasons play out and how the season Dak has and how the season Mike. Because, I mean, Micah Parsons is, I mean, he's a guy that has, and rightfully so, has Cowboys fans excited. And even people that don't like the Cowboys talk about Micah Parsons and how great he is. I mean, they'll be like, yeah, I hate the Cowboys, but Micah Parsons is a generational talent. And I mean, so the things that I can see this guy accomplishing in the future is just, it's scary good. I thank God every day that we drafted Micah Parsons and that the Cowboys didn't have me drafting, because I was probably going after a guy like Slater. I was like, man, we should have got Slater, but you know, whatever. And you know, because I just thought that we needed off the offensive line a little bit more, and not that I didn't like Michael Parsons, but then once they drafted Parsons, you know, and I started hearing some things and seeing some things, I bought in, and then afterwards, now I no regrets. Like I'm happy we grabbed Parsons and wouldn't change it for the world, because the dude he's unreal. But at this point in time, I got to say Dak, just because of, you know, the longevity, what he's proven over the years that he's played.
You couldn't give me two players in last year's draft for Parsons. I think Slater was amazing, and Asante Samuel, and they're both from the same team, and they could be like, we'll give you those two guys for Parsons. And I'm like, and what?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah. No, there's nobody in the game right now that I'm taking over Parsons. I think he's that good. I mean, just you just don't find players that can do what he can. You just don't find people with that skill set that can do it just all over the field. So yeah, I mean, I was the first one to start eating crow and saying, hey, look, I was wrong. It was like, I criticized the pick when it first happened. I was wrong. So, hey, I'm never too prideful to admit when I was wrong. I was wrong about Parsons. Wrong. Hell, I got a number 11 jersey hanging in my closet right now. So
I feel like I say this every podcast. I had him as linebacker 4. I am a moron. I am an idiot. I am a fool. If you never listen to me about the draft again, if you don't read my work about the draft because of Micah Parsons, hey, I understand. I get it. Fine. I gotten a couple right, but I had never been more wrong than that. So I'm with you, Kelly.
Hey, I think a lot of people were wrong about Parsons. A lot of people were wrong about Parsons. So hey, man, there's a line of them there that are hey, and when you think about it, if they redid the draft tomorrow, Parsons is going to be there at number one.
Over quarterbacks.
I don't think that I think that he's the guy. I think that every team is looking at that and going, yeah, we should have got Parsons. And thank God he didn't go to another NFC East team.
They both picked before us. One picked a player, seems like a pretty good receiver, great. The next one traded down and then picked Tony.
Yeah. That was the best part of it all, is that they get to look back and say, we could have had Micah Parsons.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Here's another comment from Rika. I was 100% dead ass right on LVE and Tristan Hill.
But hey, LV, he had one good year, but then
yikes. Yep.
And she's also saying she was wrong about Zach Martin. So I don't know how y'all felt about that pick at the time, but yeah, I don't hear too many people talking about that.
Notre Dame fan, so I loved Zach Martin. I love that pick, and I never believed that they wanted the Johnny Manziel thing was, a get Jerry's name out there. That was never a thing. That was Zach Martin or Ryan Shazier was gonna be that pick. It was gonna be that pick about 3 picks before, when they knew what was coming up, and I'm glad they got who they got.
What's sad to think about for me anyway is some of the great players that this Cowboys team has drafted that we have done absolutely shit with. I mean, because you look at it, I mean, you've got Zach Martin, on the downside of his career. He's still great, but let's just say it. I mean, he's getting long in the tooth. You've got Tyron Smith, Travis Frederick's already retired. I mean, they were one of the at a time they were one of the best offensive line in the league. And you just look at some of the guys that the Cowboys have drafted like that, and you're just like, how? And now you've got a guy like Dak Prescott that you drafted in the 4th round, and you had him on a rookie contract where you could have spent all this money to put around them to try to do what a lot of these teams do, to spend big money while your quarterback's on that rookie contract and get it done. Then we failed to do that. Then didn't sign him, drug it out on the damn franchise tag, franchised him twice, and then ended up paying him what the market value said he was worth. And it's just like, you just wonder how many times can this Cowboys team just, they find gold in the draft and then they just let it go to waste. It's like, eventually this talent that they're drafting is going to have to pay dividends. You just have to think that, but hasn't happened yet. It's discouraging.
That honestly sounded like the Cowboys beef, but I think Paul's going to set you up right now.
Here's the theme of the episode here, Kelly, is where you get to squash your Cowboys beef, and this is where you have 1 to 5 minutes to get whatever issues, new or old, you want to get off your chest. You can act as if maybe Jerry, Steven, or anyone associated with the Cowboys that you have problems with, and you can act as if they're listening.
Well, it's what I just kind of harped on a little bit as part of it. I would like to. I just want to hear nothing from Jerry and Steven. Nothing. I don't want to hear from them. Like, I just don't. Like, I don't want to hear them selling the same old pipe dream every year. I don't want to hear them selling their same shit. I mean, look, I love doing my Jerry impressions, and I love the Jerryisms. I love the way he talks and stuff. But listen, man, he's not a GM. He's not a GM, but he does act like a GM. You always hear him and Steven talking about, like, just not that long ago, he's talking about Zeke is the focal point of the offense. Well, I want to hear that from Mike McCarthy. Mike, is that what you really believe, or are you just going off of what Jerry's telling me? Do you believe that Ezekiel Elliott is still the focal point of our offense, or that he should be the focal point of our offense? I understand we paid him a shit ton of money, but is he the guy who's really the focal point of the offense? Because I don't really buy that at this point. I mean, I don't think that Zeke is by any means like, trash. I know a lot of people are like, Zeke's done, this and that. I don't necessarily believe that. Still think he's got some good time left in him. But, you know, you always hear, and then Jerry's talking about, well, we like the guys we got at wide receiver. Well, I remember when he said that shit about when they cut Dez. He's like, we're good at wide receiver. We don't need a bona fide number one wide receiver. We've got a group of guys collectively. And then what did they do? They went out and they got these number one draft picks for Amari Cooper, you know, who you turn around and just a few short years later, you ship him off to Cleveland for a 5th round draft pick. I mean, these guys, we consistently get these great players in the draft and then do what with them? Because you're not letting these coaches really run. You're not really letting these coaches do what they get paid to do. These coaches are paid to develop this team and let them run the team however the fuck they want to. But you're constantly seeing things where Jerry is either bringing in, hey, you can be the head coach, but this has to be your offensive coordinator. This guy and this guy, they've got to stay on the, like, nobody ever really gets to come into the Cowboys organization and run it how they see fit. Nobody, you know. Bill Parcells, you know, he wanted to do it. He tried. He kind of gave a little bit of shit to Jerry, you know, and in the end they bumped heads and Parcells like, well, you know, fuck this. So it's just Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones. It seems to be the exact same way. Their ego is what their downfall is, because they believe that they know what is best for this team. And yet there's 27 years of evidence proving that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Because if they did, we'd have a Super Bowl. We maybe have played in an NFC championship game by now. Like, it's pathetic to look at this franchise and the talent that's come through here and to say that we've only won 3 playoff games. 3 playoff games. In the last 25 years, it's embarrassing as a Cowboys fan to see that and to see some of the great talent that's come through this door, some of the great teams that have come through this door. But I feel like Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones are just, I feel like they're what stops this team from getting over the hump. Everybody's like, what's gonna get this team over the hump? Well, it's sad to say, and it really is disheartening for me to look and say, when Jerry's gone, Steven's there. Is he going to be any different? Like, do you learn from your mistakes? You know, Jerry talks about, you know, learning from mistakes. I've heard him say that. Well, he doesn't learn from his mistakes. When are you going to just be like, you know what? I'm going to hire a true GM. I'm going to sit back and I'm going to let this guy build something special. I mean, you look at what, you know, Lynch has done up in San Francisco. I hate the 49ers. But I admire the shit out of what they've done there, because he brought in a coach, you know, young, creative coach, and he said, hey, you do what you want to do. You bring in the guys you want to bring in, you know, you run the team the way you want. And they're great. I mean, fuck, they beat us last year with Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, they got to a Super Bowl and played in a Super Bowl. And it just, it's unbelievable that you can see teams like that will advance all the way, because, you know, they don't have their ownership meddling in it. You don't look, Robert Kraft ain't meddling in the Patriots when the Patriots dynasties were going on. You know, I mean, we have the only team in the NFL that has an owner that has to be heard, that has to be involved in every little thing. And I just want him and Steven to just shut the hell up and let somebody that knows the game of football run that goddamn team.
I was going to say, from your do the impression and tell them to shut the fuck up, but I want you to save that for the return of Cowboys in Chaos, because I want that brought back. Megan, you guys work it out. I know you're busy. Do your shit. Congratulations on the job, but let's get that back on for this next season. I need it.
Absolutely.
All right, Kelly, again, man, I can't thank you enough for coming on tonight. Before we get you out of here, I know you do some good things on TikTok. Mike mentioned the podcast. Can you talk to people about the content that you have this year and where we can find it?
Yeah, so I got my TikTok's pretty much the same as my Twitter handle. You can actually find me. Let me look this up. I can never remember what my TikTok handle is, because it's it's at Kelly K9 _ 1980. So I put I put some Cowboys related material on there, and I've got a lot of just kind of, you know, off the wall goofy shit that I put on there too. So just kind of like getting people to laugh and whatnot. But so yeah, you can find me on there, and then Twitter at Kelly K9. So I'll definitely be putting out, since I always after the game, you'll find a post game reaction from me, whether it's good or whether it's bad, win or loss. I'm always on there giving a little post game reaction. And then, you know, there's always going to be a few games where the bigger games where I might come out before and put out a little some hype. You know, I kind of leave the hype stuff to Mike Tag. He's the hype guy. That's my guy right there. But every once in a while, I'll come out and drop a little hype video myself, because sometimes I can't contain the energy that's inside me. So September 11th, I'm going to be there for the Sunday night football game against the Bucks. I know Mike's going to be there too, so I think me and him are going to collab on a hype video. So that should be fun, something fun to look forward to, and we're going to blow the roof off of that fucking bitch.
Yes, sir.
Great. I can't wait.
Yes,
Cannot
sir.
wait.
We'll remind the people they can find you on Twitter, Kelly.
Yes, it's at Kelly K9.
Guys, Mike, remind the people they can find you on Twitter, sir.
At CD Piglet, nice and easy. And now, before I jump off to cook food, we're going to cancel this, and I'm going to find out what the hell he was doing in that doghouse for 45 minutes.
Guys, I'm Paul Ryan. You can find me on Twitter at Paul_Ryan15. We appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you guys next week.